Chapter 56 The Alarms. Roz had traveled incredible distances and faced extraordinary challenges on her mission to stop the poison tide. And now, after all she had overcome, her hard work was paying off. The mining station manager had agreed to cooperate. It was a wonderful turn of events, but our robot's good feelings didn't last long. Because just as the humans were exiting the jail room, alarms began blaring across the station. Ree, ree, ree. Chapter 57 The Attack. Ree, ree, ree. While alarms blared, Akiko and George hurried across the station and up to the control room, where they found the other crew members bustling around. The station manager quickly tapped her computer, and the alarms went quiet. Akiko, you need to see this. That was the voice of Vivian, the technology manager. She was leaning over the electronic table. On screen was a map with the juggernaut at the center. Countless dots were appearing on the map. Those aren't ships, said Vivian, pointing to the dots. They could be animals, but it would take a whole lot of fish to light up the map like this. Send a drone, said Akiko. I want to see what's out there. A moment later, the drone glided away from the station. Vivian tapped the electronic screen and pulled up the view from the drone's camera. It showed wisps of fog floating by, and below the fog was the ocean. What's that? Said Akiko as a layer of sea foam swept across the water. Vivian zoomed in on the image. I think that might be a whole lot of fish. Indeed, it was. The ocean was teeming with more fish than anyone had ever seen. Their shiny bodies slashed through the waves, creating a great circle of sea foam that tightened around the station until the fish slammed against the base. An endless flow of fish pounded the outer wall, but it would take more than fish to damage the mighty juggernaut. However, the fish weren't alone. Behind them were dolphins numbering in the thousands. They whirled around the station, studying it and searching for any weak points. Then came sharks and walruses and squid. So many animals started thrashing through the waves that the ocean seemed to be boiling over. Only one creature could have organized such an attack. The ancient shark had given Roz a chance to reason with the humans, but the shark felt certain that the robot would fail. And when she'd learned that Roz had been captured, she didn't wait around for more information. She sent the signal for her armies to advance. The ancient shark lurked in the background as the attack unfolded. Her fish companions whispered in her ears and reported the events as they happened. From time to time, she sent the fish into the fray with messages for the ocean warriors. Be careful not to harm each other. Pace yourselves. The fight has only just begun. Look out for the poison tide in the deep. High above the action, Roz peered out from her jail room window. She had done everything in her power to stop the poison tide peacefully, and she had just almost succeeded. But now the ocean battle had begun, and all she could do was watch. Chapter 58 The Cloud. A dark cloud was rising in the south. It billowed and swelled and constantly changed its shape, and it was headed straight for the juggernaut. As the cloud floated closer, it became clear that it was actually a gigantic flock of birds. There were seagulls and puffins and cormorants and vultures and skuas and terns and sandpipers and eagles and every other type of northern bird, all flying together. The ancient shark's call to action had made the leap from ocean to sky, and birds were coming to join the fight. Up in the control room, the station manager and the assistant manager stood together as the birds approached. Roz must have something to do with this, said Akiko. You don't really think that robot can speak with animals, said George. Akiko shrugged. Do you have a better explanation? A lone seagull flew out to greet the flock. Nimbus knew the station well, and his advice quickly spread from bird to bird. He explained that it was useless to attack a building or a platform or a walkway. The birds needed to focus on easier targets, and then a group of bosons marched into view. The sky darkened as the flock of birds descended. Smaller birds splattered the robots with their droppings. Larger birds scraped at robots' face with their talons. The bosons were caught off guard. One robot stumbled over a railing and slammed hard onto a lower platform. His body fizzled and twitched, and then was still. The remaining bosons fought back, swatting at birds with their big blocky hands. Boson 1 stomped through a doorway and stomped back out holding a rifle. He aimed the weapon and fired. Blazing beams of light flashed through the air. Charred feathers floated across the station. Winged bodies dropped into the waves. The birds regrouped and searched for other targets. They battered windows and tore at floodlights. Then they noticed the drone hovering high above. The flying machine zigged and zagged, dodging eagles and vultures, but before it could find safety, it was swallowed up in a seething swarm of birds. One poor sandpiper was sucked into an engine, and poof! The engine exploded into flames, and the drone went spiraling toward the control room. The humans dove for cover as the drone came hurtling at them. With its last gasp of life, the drone pulled up, narrowly missing the windows but crashing onto the roof of the control tower. It bowed through the cluster of antennas, and all wireless communication cut out. Signals from the robots suddenly stopped. The electronic map of the area went blank. The Juggernaut had lost contact with the outside world. Chapter 59. The Hydros. Wireless communication had been cut, but wired communication was still working fine. The station manager tapped her computer, and her commands instantly traveled down through the Juggernaut's wiring. Far below the control room, the underwater door glided open. The Hydro robots had been activated. The Hydros were designed to make repairs and to haul heavy loads, but if necessary, they could also defend the station. Hydro 1, Hydro 2, and Hydro 3 cruised out the door and were immediately mobbed by ocean animals. Fish threw themselves against the robots. Squid sprayed ink to blind them. Dolphins rammed into their sides. None of this bothered the robots, however. Their engines roared, and they easily plowed through the crowd. The Hydro surfaced and sprayed out and started circling the station. Around and around they went faster and faster, churning up a tremendous ring of rough water in their wake. Then the robots started firing their sound cannons. Bwah, bwah, bwah. Powerful bursts of noise blasted from their mouths. Bwah, bwah, bwah. The animals had never heard anything so loud. The noise rattled their bones and echoed up through the station, high above. From her jail room window, Ross watched as the ocean trembled with each blast. Wah, wah, wah. Below the surface, frightened animals' voices cried out, "What should we do? Attack! Retreat!" The ancient shark commanded her armies to press on. "Hold the line," she shouted, but the animals were too panicked to follow orders, and with each blast of noise, they were driven farther and farther away. Chapter 60. The Biggest Warriors. The humans felt a sense of relief when the Hydros took control of the ocean, but then came a change on the horizon. Akiko was the first to notice the rows of dark shapes. She grabbed her binoculars and looked closely. Giant bodies breached the surface and then dipped beneath the waves. Wide tails rose above the water and then sank below. Mist sprayed high into the air and then drifted down. The station manager lowered the binoculars and uttered a single word. Whales. Like a fleet of living, breathing warships, hundreds of whales had united to form a superpod. Every species of northern whale was there. Different sizes and shapes and colors, they were ready to fight, and the water thrummed with their battle song. Whales are ocean warriors. We're coming to defend. The only home we've ever known. We'll fight until the end. Off to battle we now charge, with fortune on our side. We will defeat our enemy and stop the poison tide. The whales picked up speed, and their motion created a wave in the ocean behind them. They swam faster, and their wave grew taller. It became a massive mountain of water rushing toward the Juggernaut. The hydros came together to face the new threat. In the past, they had scared off the occasional whale, but they'd never faced an army of whales. The robots prepared to fire their sound cannons. Before coming into range, however, the whales vanished beneath the surface, and their towering tidal wave continued on without them. The wave was too much for the hydros, but when they tried to dive down to safety, they found the army of whales was waiting below. At the same time, the whales blew air from their blowholes, and a dense layer of bubbles surged upward, forcing the robots into the tidal wave's path. Engines roared as Hydro 1 veered right and Hydro 2 veered left, but for Hydro 3 there was no escape. The tidal wave lifted her up and then smashed her down against the base of the station with the thunderous explosion of sea foam. And when the wave subsided, the full extent of the damage was revealed. Hydro 3's crumpled body had pierced the outer wall, and now water was flooding into the station. The whales weren't finished. Another group arrived, pushing an iceberg like a battering ram. The two remaining hydros dug their claws into the ice and blasted their engines. It was a battle of strength, whales versus robots, with the iceberg caught in between. Sound cannons were fired, bwah, bwah, bwah. But then came more whales and more waves and more icebergs. In the frenzy, Hydro 2 was crushed between enormous blocks of ice, and she sank into deep. Several whales were badly injured, and they slipped away to nurse their wounds. The remaining whales surrounded Hydro 1, distracting her, confusing her. A powerful groan rumbled up from the depths, and a whale launched out of the water and crashed down onto the robot. More whales attacked, biting, ramming, beating, crashing. Hydro 1 was broken and battered and taken on water. Unable to stay afloat, she sank below the waves and never surfaced again. The Hydro robots had been destroyed.